have to admit that for the past couple weeks, I've had this growing sense of excitement. And I know it sounds really strange because this is completely the wrong time of year, but it was kind of that feeling I get when I would see the first green shoot of something coming up through the snow, or when you kind of see those first buds on the trees in spring that lets you know winter is almost over. I've been feeling this excitement of life breaking out in beautiful ways as we've prepared for this day. The seeds were planted in various meetings and conversations as we found ourselves even talking about and getting ready for Advent, heaven forbid. But it all became real a couple of weeks ago when I heard the choirs come back. I was in my office and I heard them gather and start to sing. And then the Agape preschool started this week. And after 3 months of quiet mornings and slow afternoons, it was really exciting to welcome them back. It's a blessing to see a parade of children and parents come in and out and up and down the hallway every day, morning and afternoon. God bless Jane and Mary for their faithfulness. I hope they have rested well this weekend. It makes me smile to sit in my office and to hear the children singing their songs and to be playing on the playground. Even though I've enjoyed this kind of slow and easy pace of summer, it's really helped me, and I appreciate the time to kind of find my footing in this new place. It's really exciting to see things start back up again. Today, we celebrate all the hard work that goes into bringing all of those things alive. Because, I don't know if you know this or not, none of this happens by accident. This is one of the special days in our church year that help orient and order our lives as a community of faith. It's a day where we can stop, even if for a moment, and we can give thanks for what is, what was, and what is to be. See, time, it's this fluid and it's this really fickle thing. That's why some days seem to fly by and some drag on forever. It's why we can set our clocks back in the fall and then wind them forward in the spring, and it's why the school has a different year than the church has a different year than the calendar. Time is fluid and it's fickle. So it helps to have special days like this and seasons that help anchor us in place. Points that help us order our lives and center the rhythms of how we live and be. And these events, they not only help us mark time, they also mark us. You can see this on the national level. As a nation, we're shaped by the wars that we fought or the tragedies that we've experienced, the battles that we choose. We're defined by how we responded in the moment and how we process them moving forward. We can feel these points that mark our time on the individual level as well. As individuals, we're shaped by moments of great joy and deep sorrow. Those times when time itself seems to stop and the future is forever changed. These events may not anchor our lives. They may do quite the opposite. But these events, they mark time. There's a before and there's an after. They mark time, and in turn, they leave their mark on us. Today's scripture passage is about an event that has anchored and defined both Jewish and Christian communities for thousands of years. You often hear this passage from Exodus read during Holy Week. Often it's read on Maundy, Thursday, because it celebrates and establishes the feast of Passover, which is the meal that Jesus ate with his disciples on Thursday, right before he was handed over to crucifixion. So then this feast of Passover then becomes the basis for our Christian communion. It anchors us in who we are. But I don't want to get that far ahead of history. Because how God instructs the Israelites to observe Passover says a lot about what it means to be God's people in the world. Last week we read how God saw the affliction of Israel, how God heard their cries and felt their pain. Enslaved in Egypt for over 400 years, the Israelites were a people that needed a new beginning. But liberation does not come easy. See, today's scripture reading skips over about 10 chapters from when our last reading left off. 10 chapters after God first met Moses at the burning bush and enlisted him in this plan of deliverance. 10 chapters of failed negotiations, including signs and wonders and plagues of varying degrees, have brought us to this place that is climactic, if not problematic, the Passover of God. God has announced this final plague, and it's hard to fathom the death of the firstborn, no matter how old, no matter of what species. This level of violence is hard to stomach, but it's a sad truth that violent regimes often come to violent ends, and that far too much innocent blood is spilled in the process. So this is the context of the Passover meal. It's in the shadow of death, with a history of oppression behind them and an uncertain future of freedom ahead. God marks this moment as holy. On the cusp of their exodus, God gave Israel a story that would forever define them as a people, and a feast that would always remind them of God's deliverance. The Israelites are about to be set free for the first time in generations. They're about to enter the waters of the Red Sea as slaves and emerge as a free people, a free nation. So this marks their new beginning. The Passover instructions that we read begin with the reordering of time. This will be the first of all months for you, God says. You will count it as the first month of the year. This is how you're to order your lives. The institution and the observation of Passover mark the birth of Israel and would become the guiding principle in their national identity. Throughout all the laws that are set out in Deuteronomy, there's this constant call to remember. We even read about it in our Sunday school class this morning. Remember that you were once slaves and foreigners in Egypt. Over and over again throughout the law, this phrase pops up. And it's usually in conjunction with laws that call for justice or for mercy. You shall not deprive a resident alien or an orphan of justice. You shall not take a widow's garment in pledge. Remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. Or a law like this: when you send a male slave out from you as a free person, you shall not send him out empty-handed. Provide liberally out of your flock, your threshing floor, and your winepress, thus giving to him some of the bounty with which the Lord your God has blessed you. Remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. This act of remembering helps them to maintain humility and promote compassion and establish justice. Remembering the times that we were scared or sad allows us to be present with someone else in their pain. Remembering that we were once immigrants reminds us to welcome the stranger and to care for those fleeing situations of such violence that we can't even imagine. Passover is not just about remembering what happened. It's also about looking forward and preparing for what's to come. See, the Israelites were about to set out on the long road to freedom. So God gives them this meal, something to give them strength for the journey ahead as well as this marker to remember what came before. There is both readiness and togetherness in this holy meal. First, it's a communal event. Moses is instructed to give these instructions to the whole community, not just the men, not just the wealthy, not just the well-known, not just the hardworking, but everyone. This rite, this meal, is open to everyone. Every family is to take an animal from the flock, and if your household is too small for a whole animal or you can't afford one, you're to join with someone else. You're to divide it up between all the members of the household. Again, everyone was included. All were welcome to take part. Everyone was to get their fair share, from the oldest to the youngest, from the strongest to the weakest, from the richest to the poorest, from the lightest to the darkest. All were to get their fair share. No one was to be left out. Every man, woman, and child would be going on this journey. They all needed strength for the road ahead. The other important thing about this meal is that it wasn't a sacrifice for God or for the priests. The instructions, the very graphic instructions that we read about how to prepare and how to cook the animal shows that it was meant to be used as food, not as a sacrifice. It's to be meant to given to the people, not to God. It was a meal to be eaten together. See, this values togetherness. That in togetherness that we have comfort. Togetherness gives us comfort in times of trouble and strength, in times of adversity. We see this happening all over the place in times of natural disaster. Communities coming together to take care of themselves. Standing in solidarity together guards against despair, and it's a power to be reckoned with. Like we said before, none of what happens here in this church happens by accident. So it's good to take time to honor and bless the hands and the hearts and the voices that so faithfully serve this community. Everyone that comes together to make this place possible. It's good to be reminded that we are better together, that there's strength and there's comfort and there's power in our solidarity. It's good to be reminded that freedom only comes through standing together with God and community. It comes when we stand in solidarity with each other against the powers that would oppress and enslave. It comes when all have received their portion and have eaten their fill. And it comes when God empowers those to walk away from the pharaohs that forget the past, that fear the outsider, and live only for the present moment in violence and hate. There's strength and there's comfort in our togetherness. See, life can and will lead us through hard times. It's not a matter of if, but when. And having company doesn't always make the way easier, but it can make it a lot less lonely. That's why the scripture calls us to bear each other's burdens. We're called to be together. And second, we're called to be ready. The Passover is as much about readiness as it is about togetherness. Together, the people prepare the meal. Together, they eat. And together, they get ready to go. There's a sense of urgency in their preparation. God makes the point of telling them to eat with their belts buckled, their shoes on their feet, and the staff in their hand. To eat in haste and to be ready to go. It would have been easy for the Israelites to fall into complacency. After 9 plagues that didn't work, why would this one be any different? It must have been discouraging to keep getting their hopes up that things were going to change, to have things only get worse instead of better. But God calls them to never give up hope, to keep on holding on, to keep the sandals on their feet and the staff in their hand. We know what it's like to live in this tension between what was and what will be, to live in the world as it is, and to feel the world as it should be, as God would have it be. Passover is this ritual that kind of holds this tension. It holds both the memory of what was while making ready for what will be. It holds the past and makes ready the future. That's the beauty and the power of ritual. Our rituals, they shape us by helping us to remember the past, even as they prepare us for the future. Today is one of those days, an annual day of blessing, of welcoming back, of restarting, of renewing. And it's good for us to take this moment at the beginning of our new year to honor the many ways that you contribute to the flourishing of this community. It's good to take a moment and to remember that there's beauty and sacredness in our coming together. To remember that we gather together to be fed and to be encouraged, to learn and to grow, to remember the past and to look forward to the future. I look forward to see where God is going to lead us in the coming months and years. I'm excited about the plans that God has for us as we make ourselves ready. We're on our marks. We're all set. Our shoes are on. So let's go. I'm ready. Are you?